Greetings. No, it's early in the morning, but we have a lot to greet about. For those who don't know, my name is Nkechi Taifa. I'm Advocacy Director for Criminal Justice for the Open Society Foundations, and I'm the founding director of the Justice Roundtable Coalition, which is a diverse coalition of over 100 national organizations, yay, working to reform criminal justice here in the United States. Believe it or not, we were founded way back in 2002. The Justice Roundtable was the catalyst behind the passage of the Second Chance Act in 2008, as well as the Fair Sentencing Act in 2010, which reduced the disparity between crack and powder cocaine. So, as convener of the Justice Roundtable, I am thrilled that the advocacy of the many organizations that are part of the coalition in the area of executive clemency has culminated in some very exciting and memorable moments for formerly incarcerated people who have been granted clemency. Yesterday, we successfully coordinated the attendance of nearly 30 commutation recipients from the Obama, Bush, Clinton, and Ford eras, along with family members of commutation recipients. If you're from the Obama era, let me hear a shout out, Obama era commutations. Okay. Any Bush era here? All right, John Forte, okay. Philip Emery. What about Clinton era? Okay. What about the Ford era? Come on, stand on up here. Christmas Day, 1975, he was commuted. All of whom have come to Washington, D.C., 7 of whom were selected by the president to join him in a private lunch at Busboys and Poets restaurant. The lunch directly followed the president's announcement of 61 new commutation recipient grants. I'm so very proud that Ramona Brandt, Norman Brown, Philip Emery, Angie Jenkins, Serena Nunn, Michael Short, and Kimber Smith had the opportunity for this unique and once-in-a-lifetime opportunity with the president. The president's announcement and private lunch occurred as part of the myriad of criminal justice and clemency advocacy engaged in by Justice Roundtable participants. The latest being this morning's Conversations on Justice with Shaka, Senghor, the acclaimed darling of Oprah Winfrey, whose seminal book, Righting My Wrongs, is a tale of forgiveness, hope, and second chances, and reminds us that our worst deeds do not define just who we are. And then after this discussion today, and after hearing introductory remarks by commutation recipients and family members, many of us will walk across the street to the White House for an historic White House briefing, Life After Clemency. I just want to state in closing that President Obama's special advisor, Valerie Jarrett, announced at yesterday's Women in Criminal Justice White House convening that the president, after dining with commutation recipients, stated that, quote, he has felt this enormous sense of urgency. And she also stressed that going forward, now she did say this, and it's on live stream, that every commutation recipient in the future does not have to be squeaky clean. Y'all know what I'm talking about. It is our hope that our president was so moved by the men and women he met and dined with that he would do everything he can to grant as many clemency applications as possible so that everyone can return home to their families and to their loved ones. And so with that, it gives me great pleasure to bring up here who will introduce our, well, you know what? It's Kimber Smith. So, you know, there was a reason why my phone was still on. I hope everything is okay. I'm just about to introduce Van Jones. Kimber, is everything okay? You're on speaker. Kimber?
Yes, I'm on my way.
She's on her way, everyone. Give her a big hand. Kimber Smith. All right. The poster child of this movement, really, the poster child. But we're about to move beyond the poster children, right, Shaka? We're about to move beyond the first-time nonviolent drug offender, because if we really want to make a dent in mass incarceration, we have to go bold, okay? And part of this is part of that process of humanizing people, okay? They're not scary. They're not super predators. They're ordinary, everyday people, just like everybody, else. So with that, it brings great honor to bring up Van Jones. I mean, Van, I don't know how he does it. Every time I turn on the TV, doesn't matter what time of the day or at the night, he is on there. He is spot on, correct, Van, we appreciate, but he comes whenever he's called. I don't know how he does it. We really, really appreciate you. Van Jones, CNN political commentator, founder of Dream Corps, founder of Yes We Code, founder of Green for All. I don't even have this one. Founder of Color of Change, founder of hashtag Cup 50. Let's bring up Van Jones, who's going to introduce Shaka. Oh, and I forgot to mention the hashtag. Can you mention the hashtag?
You know, you my heart. Well, I'm gonna keep it brief, but it's two things happening today. It's celebration of the victories we have won, but it's also rededication to the victory we have left to win, and that's always the tension in this movement. I can't tell you how many times we've been in this very room, joy and tears, fighting each other, trying to continue this progress, this forward march. But we're not going to stop until we get all the folk home we need to be home. And that's got to be what we're about. And can we please give a round of applause to Nkechi for leading us, holding us, helping us, keeping us together. Every you talk about the poster child and the darling of and all this type of stuff, but every movement needs a god sister and a godmother to hold it together. That's Nkechi. So we're proud to be here in your house. Now look, she doesn't forget much, but even she's not perfect. And you can't have anything like today without some kind of a hashtag. And so the hashtag today is hashtag clemency is justice. Clemency is justice, not charity, justice. So now speaking of, it's just been such an amazing honor for me over this past, I guess, year and a half to be working with the hashtag Cut 50 movement. Jessica Jackson, who can't be here with us, Matt Haney, who is here. By the way, give a round of applause to Matt Haney, one of the founders of the Cut 50 movement, and also president of the school board in San Francisco, fighting against this school to prison pipeline, trying to get in the front end of this stuff as well as on the back end. So Matt is here. But this Cut 50 movement, which came as a dream to just cut the prison population in half at least, and then cut in half again and again and again until we're done with it. You were so welcoming of us. But the greatest champion that we get a chance to work with every day, and somebody who is a living representative of the entire ethos of what we're about, which is that genius should not be wasted. Talent should not be wasted. A big heart and the creativity of so many of our folks who are locked away should not be wasted. We all of us have the opportunity to shine, and as Shaka has now made famous, our worst deeds don't define us. And so we get a chance to work with Shaka every day. Many of you got a chance to work with him quite a bit, but we get a chance to hear today from him his book. How many people have got a chance to read the book or at least know about it? All right. So his book, which nobody wanted to publish. His book, which nobody wanted to publish. His memoir. So he and his partner, Ebony, self-published it. They were selling it out of the back of cars in Detroit. And that book is so powerful that it got into the hands of Oprah Winfrey herself. For those of us who publish books, that's our dream. Oprah ain't read a quote from me. And I got 2 publishers and agents and managers, and she don't know my name. But this brother's book wound up in her home and was so powerful that she brought him there. You guys all saw the thing on Super Soul Sunday. And he's now being able to spread his message and his story around the world. But it just goes to show the stone that the builder rejected is becoming the head cornerstone. Shaka Senghor.
Hey, good morning, good morning, good morning. I got the rapper mic. This is what's up. Spit some bars up in here, son. Wow, this is I've done a lot of talks, but I don't think none is as fulfilling as this moment right here, to be able to share a moment with everybody who's been given a second chance to be at home with their family and their loved ones. So I just say welcome home, welcome back. I hope y'all enjoying this experience. We're really understanding that we got so much work to do, because those are our brothers and sisters we left behind. Yesterday I was in Ohio. I've been on this crazy tour, so sometimes I forget where I'm at. But I was in Ohio doing a talk. And in the middle of the talk, one of the ladies who was there, she came like 3 hours to come experience the talk. She's a friend of a guy named Keith who's on death row. And in the middle of my talk, he actually called her. And he called because he thought I was done. He thought I had wrapped up, and he just wanted to say thank you for donating 100 books to his mentoring program. These are the type of men and women that are incarcerated. Men and women who care about other people. Men and women who use their intelligence, their spirit, their big hearts to help change the world that we live in. He's slated to die soon, but his focus is on saving other kids. He's basically stood up and said that he's innocent, and all the evidence points to that reality, and we know how that story plays out over and over again. And he could be real selfish, and he could focus all this energy on trying to fight to ensure that they don't snuff out his breath. But instead, he puts energy into making sure kids have books in areas where books aren't readily available. And so he got a chance to share his voice with an audience of people, and it meant the world to me to be in a position to allow that moment to happen. And so today, coming here, my mind is just full of all type of thoughts. It's been a very emotional ride putting the book out and going through everything that comes with that. But I'm so inspired today. And I'm inspired because I see my brothers and sisters who understand where I come from, who understand why we get up every day and we tell our stories in our most painful moments over and over and over again. When I walked out of prison in 2010, I knew I was one of the fortunate ones. I was one of the fortunate ones because I went to prison for second-degree murder. And a lot of us don't make it back. I knew I was fortunate because I have friends who are serving life sentences for nonviolent drug offenses. And I knew I had a responsibility. And my responsibility was to ensure that their voices are heard, and that we really start thinking about what it means to be humane. What does real justice look like? What do real second chances look like? And why they really matter. So just to give you a brief overview, I can't give you all the details, I need y'all to buy that book. I got out of prison in 2010. I started mentoring in Detroit, working with kids to ensure that they didn't take the path that I took. For that work, I ended up winning what was called the Black Male Engagement Leadership Award. As a result of that work, I ended up getting a fellowship at MIT Media Lab in Cambridge. That led to me getting a fellowship at Kellogg for part of my leadership work. Ultimately, I went on to do a TED Talk about second chances, redemption, which became one of the top TED Talks of 2014. I started writing in solitary confinement because I felt like that was the only way that I can keep myself from going crazy. And when I began writing, one of the things I wrote down is that one day I want Oprah to read one of my books. Seriously, like I wrote on a piece of paper, like one day she's gonna read one of my books. It's gonna be a bestseller. And so that dream ultimately came true. I had an opportunity. I taught 3 semesters since I've been home at the University of Michigan. Only professor with a GED and goes to school with Timberlands on. So the thing is, I do a lot of cool stuff. But in the process of doing cool stuff, it really started making me think about how much genius exists inside prison. So one day, I was at MIT Media Lab, and I was speaking with the director, and I said, I want to do a prison hackathon. And he was like, no, Shaka, what does that mean? Like, do you want to, like, break people out of prison? I'm like, well, I want to do that too, but not with y'all. Y'all might snitch on me or something. But I wanted to illustrate what I believe is a very valuable point, is that we are in the business of just throwing people away and discarding humanity. And so what I did is I came up with 5 design challenges. And they were based on how in prison we lived our everyday life. So I had them attempt to design a tattoo gun made out of a tape player motor, big pen. I know some of y'all tatted up in here. They like, yup. And the guitar string, John Forte, them guitar strings is more than just for music. I had them design what's called a stinger, which is the means by which we used to heat our water up in order for us to actually eat hot food. I had them design a lighter using 2 batteries and wire, which is how we illegally lit cigarettes when they took matches out the penitentiary. But I presented all these design challenges, and they were super excited. And I was excited for them because I felt like, this is some of the best engineering minds in the world. And I felt like if they can complete these challenges, that they'll be able to explain the science behind the challenges. And so we embarked on this journey together. 2 hours in, some of the best, most brilliant minds in the world could not complete one challenge. Not one challenge. We actually blew the power out of MIT Media Lab. I was like, yes, I loved it. But what it made me think about was, what if they had completed those challenges? Let's just say some smart student at MIT Media Lab would have made that tattoo gun. What would have been the headline splashed about? Genius at MIT Media Lab creates a tattoo gun out of scraps, out of things that's thrown away and discarded. Genius at MIT Media Lab made a lighter out of 2 batteries and a wire. Genius at MIT Media Lab. When you do that in prison, you get thrown into solitary confinement. You're labeled as being incorrigible, as being disruptive, as being a violator of rules and protocol. Because we have a tough on crime mentality. So we have to overreact to everything that doesn't fit within the neat boundaries of these lines created arbitrarily by people who don't remotely understand the men and women that they're responsible for dealing with. So when you think about that, think about what would be a smart model. What would that look like? So say you're in there creating a tattoo gun. Clearly you have some type of engineering experience, the ability to innovate and iterate. So why not look at that and say, you know what? Yes, this is a violation of rules, but here's a program we can put you in that allow you to use that same skill set for real world application. How hard is that? It's not that hard. It's not that big of an ask. When we think about where we at in terms of criminal justice reform, we say cut 50. And people are like, oh my God, what does that mean, cut 50? But those of us that's been inside, we know that there are people inside for nothing, but they couldn't afford to pay child support because they're eligible for parole and the officer's having a bad day and said that this person cussed. So it continues their sentence. We know what happens inside there. We know that it's fixable. We know the level of mental illness that exists. One of the things that I'm a firm advocate for is the abolishment of solitary confinement. Thank you. Out of 19 years, I served 7 in solitary confinement. And while I was in solitary confinement, I realized how distorted our thinking is when it comes to criminal justice. Because we're not even conscious of what's happening on our watch. We've allowed some of the most vulnerable people in the world to be abused, to be dehumanized, to be degraded, to watch their mental capacity deteriorated further by the treatment that they receive. And this is normal in our society. We've bought into the idea, hook, line, and sinker, that tough on crime is a solution. But I always ask people this: what do you expect to get out of a person when you pour nothing but bitterness, anger, hate, degrading behavior into? What is the logical outcome? Like, I would like to believe that we're one of the smartest societies in the world, and that we can logically deduce that if you degrade and dehumanize and mistreat people, the logical outcome is that they're going to do the same to somebody else, because hurt people hurt people. Khalif Browder, in June of last year, committed suicide after being released after serving 3 years on Rikers Island for a crime he didn't commit. 2 of those years was in solitary confinement. And what he experienced in there basically destroyed the essence of his being. And when the pain became too much, he decided to kill himself. Now, he's become a martyr of the movement, but for those of us that's been inside, we know that this is an everyday occurrence, that there's somebody attempting to take their lives because they have been dehumanized, been beaten down to nothing. And we've allowed that to happen on our watch. When I was giving a talk yesterday, I was talking about how in any other area where we invest, that we would never accept a 70% failure rate. If you invest in Google right now, if you invest in Facebook right now, and these stocks begin to plummet by 70%, you will pull all your money out of it. America's penal system is the only business that's running with a 70% failure rate that we continue to invest in over and over and over again. So, being here today, clemency is justice. I think President Obama is courageous for not only commuting sentences, but for actually being vocal about it and speaking out publicly about it. First president that actually had the courage to go inside a prison. It takes courage to do that when you have a political future ahead of yourself. So, as we think about what these second chances look like, why are they important? We think about all of us. How many people here has made a poor decision in their life? How many people in here has made a decision that they probably would never tell anybody about because they're that ashamed about it and that embarrassed by it? Would you want that to be your identity for the rest of your life? That one moment for the rest of your life. There are families that are being destroyed, communities that have been destroyed because we're holding people hostage for one moment in their life, one poor decision in their life. I think about where I'm at now today. I've lived a pretty great life. Life is awesome, actually. But there's a part of my life I can never get back. And that's the opportunity to go back and parent my oldest 2 children. And I see it play out. My son lost the experience of having a father to raise him because our system isn't designed to ensure that families stay intact even when one runs afoul of the law. In fact, it does the complete opposite. It ensures that families are broken up and destroyed. I was in Germany last June. I went and visited 6 prisons in Germany. Now, first of all, I'm a brother, and so when they asked me to come to Germany to visit 6 prisons, it's like, hold up, you know what I'm saying? Like, hold on, what's this all about here, you know? But when I got there, it blew my mind. Because when you think about Germany's history, and you think about everything that's been said about Germany, I'm expecting to go over there and see something that make what we go through over here look like summer camp. I'm like, I'm gonna go over here, it's gonna be people being brutalized and chained to beds. And when I went over there, it blew my mind, absolutely blew my mind, how they interacted with the men who were incarcerated. From the very beginning of them being arrested, their goal is to re-socialize them back to society. They don't have life sentences. They have what's called lifelong sentences, which the most you can possibly serve is up to 15 years, and that means you have to be completely incorrigible. They don't have long-term solitary confinement. When I was talking to the warden, and y'all know how tough wardens can be, right? I'm talking to the warden, and I told her how long I was in solitary confinement, and she started to weep. And honestly, it was the first time I ever felt something for myself. Because that's normal. Where I come from, I got a friend that's been in solitary confinement over 30 years right now. So my 7 years was a walk in the park compared to what he went through. So when I saw her visibly weep, that was mind-blowing. Conjugal visits, and not just the flat kind of conjugal visits, but the family connection that you have to make sure, they literally make sure that they stay connected to their family. Their families can come stay days with them. No matter what type of sentence they're serving, they can actually go home on furloughs, no matter what kind of sentence they're serving. That it's mandatory that they go home on furloughs because they want to ensure that they maintain their humanity and their dignity and their sense of purpose. And so when I came back, my heart was extremely heavy because my friends don't get that opportunity. You know, some of my best mentors are serving life sentences. And I could tell you without shadow of a doubt, I would not be the man that I am without their presence in my life. These men poured into me when I was in the most angry state imaginable. I was one of the most incorrigible prisoners you can ever meet. The warden said I was the worst of the worst. At 20 years old, I was in maximum security prison, one of the youngest guys in maximum security, because I wouldn't follow no rules. I actually made up my own rules, and then didn't follow them all the time. But there were guys inside who had been locked up since they've been 16, 17 years old, sentenced to life. And they raised me. They fed me books. They challenged my thinking. You know, I would go to the library and I would select 5 or 6 books. And when I would come to bring those books back, they would have questions about every book. And we would debate. Their biggest thing was ensuring that I was actually reading what I was selecting. And then they started selecting books from me. That's how I started reading like Plato and Frantz Fanon and all this political science and philosophy, because they held me accountable. They challenged me to grow. They gave me a second chance. The government never was willing to do that, but they gave me a second chance. And this is why this work is so important. This is why our presence in this room together is so important. We have to show people that not only are we worthy, but that we're fully capable and that we're willing to ensure that other people get a second chance. Thank y'all.